Okay. Give it a few more minutes to see if anyone else is going to join us. I think there's some people who put stuff on the agenda that aren't here yet. So they'll be here in just a second. In the meantime, did you guys want to introduce yourselves at all to the people on the call, or is there anyone on the call that wants to introduce themselves?
So, hi, I'm John Alley. I normally don't come to these meetings. I work on an internal product that's sort of related to Istio.
Yeah, I'm Ian Wei. I work with John together from New York. We work on security analytics for Istio. So we need to gather like telemetry data and also the configuration data together to do some analysis. Yeah.
Okay. Arjav or Edgar, do you want to say hey or anything?
Yeah. Hey, this is Arjav Desai. I work for Oracle. We are doing something internally with Istio, so I'm looking into policy and telemetry area for that.
Okay. Great.
Yes, hi. So I am working in the Kelly team. So I am just joining in place of John Mas.
Okay.
And I guess I'll round out everybody and introduce myself. I'm Kevin Connor. I'm the engineering manager that runs the Istio team within Red Hat.
Great. I was hoping Martin would be here because I think he has the most input on the first proposal, but I think we should just go ahead and maybe talk through that, and then we can talk about your proposal as well. So a while back, we had talked about the fact that it's very hard to know, just looking at the telemetry, what pieces of networking config led to the telemetry that was generated. And so there was a desire expressed to have a way to connect virtual service and destination rules as a start in the telemetry that's gathered. So this is a proposal for how we might carry that information across to reports. There's work. The proxy now puts config in metadata at the cluster and route level for the destination rules and virtual services that were used. And so this is a proposal about how to take that information out and pass it over to downstream telemetry systems. So I think the big thing is just coming up with the right attribute namespace and seeing if the values make sense. The discussion in the doc has been primarily, should it be called destination.virtual service, or should it be config.virtual service or networking.virtual service? And then there was another discussion or question that was raised about whether or not this stuff should be exposed to the client in general, and who owns virtual service. So I don't know if there are thoughts that we want to bring up or talk about related to that, or if someone has better suggestions than what's in the document.
What's the consideration for exposing or not exposing?
So the argument was made that virtual services and destination rules are owned by the service provider.
Okay.
And so by pushing that details out to the clients, we're exposing information that they shouldn't have access to, although I'm not sure I fully buy into that because
it's already kind of available there.
Right. And those are their client concerns, but they're controlled by the server. So I don't know. This is exposing their names, giving URIs for them, but it doesn't expose any more than is already being pushed to the clients in terms of config. So I don't know if anyone out there has thoughts or concerns over that. Yeah, and then the other important thing to point out here is this proposal only works for client-side reports. So this information doesn't flow through, it's not available on the server. to begin with. So if we want to expose it, it has to come based on the architecture from the client. And it's not available for checks.
Correct. Why not available for checks? I mean, you don't want to make policy decisions based on that anyway. So but for
So like the route and cluster selection metadata stuff doesn't come through.
it can be forwarded though.
It could be forwarded.
Right. It's not today, but but if we could do something meaningful for checks, or if it can be logged, right? Again, we don't want to make policy decisions based on it, but if we want to log it with a policy decision, then I think that's an option.
Yeah. So we don't have the code in place to set that
To
up.
set that, right? Okay.
Yeah, that could be follow-on work.
Okay.
So I
Hey,
guess.
Doug,
yes.
sorry for joining late. I really apologize for joining late. Did you show what is desired by adding this? What we think we will get out of it? Like, here's a graph that we want to be able to draw, kind of a thing.
I don't have like a here's a graph kind of thing. This came up in previous working group meetings where there was, I think the Kiali team in particular wanted to show which pieces of config you could overlay on, say, fault injection, faults showing up in the system, things like that. So there's a desire to be able to link either in UIs or just looking through the logs or doing audits, this sort of networking config to the observed results.
Okay, I think that's admirable, and I think that's probably right. I think it helps to have a concrete use case, and we can ask the Kiali team, what is the chart that you want to be able to draw, and then map this to that. It helps us kind of explain the value, but also make sure that we're getting the right things. It's good to capture that. Not every graph you could ever draw, of course, but here's an example of this is something we can't do today.
Has this been reviewed by Kelly? I mean, Kevin is on the call right now, so I would hope that you or someone from your team does review it.
This is more the Kiali side, so Edgar is probably a better position to answer that one, as he's from the Kiali side. He's here in place of Maz. Edgar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but I didn't got exactly the question, but we are trying to show, as you already said, the fault injection rules, and also the virtual services also will be useful because we don't know exactly how the traffic is routed to the destination. The better we can show now is that is passing through a Kubernetes service, but we are not.
The question I have, Edgar, is: do you have a particular example of a chart you'd like to be able to draw that you can't today because you don't have enough information? And if so, would you mind literally sketching that into this doc? Doesn't have to be high fidelity. Just show here's the kind of chart or graph that we want to be able to draw. I think to me it always helps inform these designs and make sure that the design is actually meeting the requirement. And I think there probably is a solid requirement here. I'm not pushing back. I just think for completeness it would help.
Yes, I'm not completely in sync, but I remember that I saw some emails about the chart or at least the graph that we want to show. So I will look at it in the emails that I have and add it to this documentation.
Okay, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
And just Dan, for your and for everyone else, additional context, this came up a couple of working group meetings back. So I think if we have the notes and videos from that, we can find some stuff there. We took it to the networking meeting and it got the networking side of the implementation in, but I don't think we're proposing this for 1.1, or at least not the initial 1.1 release. So there's still time to sort of figure out exactly what we want to do here.
Right. I assume we're not talking about 1.1 right now.
Yeah.
No.
But in general, I know I just dropped into this meeting, but in general, I think that's a very good practice for these designs. And it just makes sure that we're designing something that literally fits the requirement.
Okay, well, so the document's there. I posted about it, I think, on the discussion site. So please provide feedback, like asking for charts and things like that. And I'll try and keep working on getting that into shape. I think the next thing on our agenda is issue 11736. Mandar, I'm going to hand it off to you.
So we are proposing that the default Istio install for 1.1 will have mixer policy enforcement disabled. And there are several reasons which are actually documented here as to why. Most customers are not using Istio policy, but they're still paying the performance cost of the fact that policy is in the mix. There is an alternative already available inside Istio, which does some of what they could have been doing with policy, though not all. So Istio RBAC is actually enforced client side, so it doesn't suffer from the same performance issues. Mixer V2 actually does address this case anyway, where we are moving all this enforcement into the client. And the other part is if mixer policy is down and you haven't set up succeed on network error, then you will actually incur an outage if mixer policy is down. And you would incur an outage, or a customer would incur an outage, even though there is no policy active. So even if you are not using any mixer policy, you would still incur an outage here. So it's an unnecessary risk that the customer is made to carry, even though they're not using policy. And then, yeah, for those reasons, we are considering switching it off for 1.1. There are some risks that we have documented there, and then mitigations. And some people have already commented on it, which is great. So, well, I mean, this is a good forum to just give feedback now, or I would encourage people to actually add their feedback to the proposal itself. And we are going to send out an email kind of more broadly on one of the announce groups to get more feedback. But we would like to, if we are to move ahead with this, it would be by 1.1, which is like within a week or two at most. Like RC1 is being cut today, so it would be shortly. We would like to hear from people like on this call, at least what they think.
I think from our side, the only time we really use this is when we integrate with our API management. So we have 3Scale being integrated through this route.
Mm-hmm.
But as that's an optional installation for us,
Okay.
I don't think we would particularly mind this, because we can turn it on when somebody installs 3Scale and the adapter with it.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? I saw Vinil also join.
Yeah, hi. I was just looking at what's happening.
Okay.
So it seems that what you said makes sense about not enabling it by default, because mostly whenever I use, I don't really enable. I don't really require it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, if you everyone is welcome to add more comments to the proposal, and then we will make a decision this week at early next week, let's say. So we have a week to kind of get all the feedback together.
Yeah, so I think you covered this, but this is turning it off, but we'll still install the pods.
Yes,
right?
correct.
The workloads will still be there.
So the workloads will still be there, which means that if someone actually needs it, they just need to change one setting and they don't need to deploy Istio policy.
Would it actually make sense to not deploy it at all? Because you can do that using Helm pretty easily, right?
So I suppose, yeah, you could not deploy it at all, and it's actually equivalent, because if it's not being enforced, then whether it's deployed or not. Yeah, we could go kind of all the way and then say disabled means it's not even deployed.
Yeah, I mean, if you do that, you make it harder to turn it on. Now I have to customize the deployment.
Would it be possible to consider a halfway house, which is to deploy it by default but disabled, and then add functionality so that we can turn it on per application for sidecar?
Okay, so that is already there in 1.1. So actually, what is already present? Okay, I need to add this to the issue. So we already have a way to switch on policy enforcement per workload. You can annotate a deployment, and then policy enforcement will just be enabled for that workload. So that feature is already present. So we are saying that by default, no one will get it. And if you want to turn it on, you can turn it on a per workload basis. That is not possible if you don't even deploy the Istio policy pods. Because then first time you do it, you have to deploy Istio policy pods.
Okay, I think from our perspective, we would ensure that happened anyway. From our installation, we would have policy and then rely on the annotation if that's already there.
Okay.
So just to add on to that, so I have been working on a tiny project which is similar to the Istio command line, but which will allow you to do things much more easily. For example, it's kind of hard to disable certain things at runtime. For example, the case with the policy checks. So what if we have a command line with a better usability? So you just mention, let's say, command disable mixer or something like that. So right now, I don't think Istio control can do that. And also a few other things. So typically we use both kubectl and Istio control to manage our cluster, but is there it would be better to have them grouped in a single command. So and to group a bunch of steps into single commands. For example, if you want to install Istio, you do you install the CRDs, and then you install a bunch of pods and everything. So instead of doing all that, let's say we create a command that say, you can just say install Istio v 1.2.5 or something like that, and it should be able to figure out how to do that. So this is something that I'm working on. I'm not sure if this is going to be really useful or what, but
have you synced up with the environments working group, specifically regarding the installer that you're talking about building?
No, not yet.
Right, because this actually does align with operator, or if it doesn't align with operator, then I think you need to talk, and we need to talk and make sure that it does.
I think it does align with that, and we're we certainly have an operator in development that's going to be handling all that as well. We're
Right.
currently replacing our Ansible-based operator with a Helm-based one to
Okay.
use the charts from upstream.
Right. And then the other comment, Vineil, is that the API that we support currently for any of this is actually the values.yaml like Helm API, right? So, for example, this particular setting of a global dot like disable policy check, right? That is part of the mesh config. But even though you can hand edit mesh config, the real supported way is actually in Helm. So you actually make the change in Helm, and then you either generate new template or do Helm install of those templates, except the operator piece.
But yeah, I do think that there's an interesting opportunity for the annotations to have a CLI over the annotations that will go and edit the deployment, add the things, and then save the deployment. So,
I mean, so you mentioned about the Helm thing, right? So it is basically a multi-step process. You first do some change in the values YAML, and then you generate the new template and so on. So what my idea is to basically try to avoid doing like all of those steps using something much simpler. So what if you can do it using just a single command? I think it, as you mentioned, it aligns with the operator thing. I need to follow up on that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So CRD, which translates into values. Yep.
And the other thing is like I want to avoid like too much YAML. I think this is more from the Linkerd perspective. So they generally avoid all the YAML stuff, and they have a pretty powerful command line. And I think that gives a really good user experience. And I think Istio is lacking that, honestly.
So I think the goal with the, and again, I think this really is a discussion in the end for the environment, but I think the goal with the operator is to put an operator in place that will look at the state of the CRD, the AP, as Mandar called it, the API, which is currently represented in that values.yaml. But instead, think of that as something that's in the API server. And the operator will watch that thing and keep the state of the system up to date. And so when we get that operator in place, if you write a command line tool that modifies the values of that CRD in the API server, then the operator would do its thing, right? So if you said we don't want an Istio, we don't want policy in effect, the operator would make sure policy was no longer in effect. We don't want a mixer installed, we would make sure mixer is no longer installed. So the moving to an operator-based model should make it easier to do things like you should make your job, if you're writing that command line tool, should make it easier because all you have to do is modify the values in that CRD, right? Mandar,
Yeah. I think that's the.
There is a caveat with that because some of the options that are there are not so easy to switch between. So you need to be wary of that.
This is
otherwise, yes.
Non-trivial. Yes, this is a non-trivial bit of work.
Correct.
That is, I think we all have agreed in principle we'd like to do that. We don't. Yes, Kevin, you're absolutely right. There are details in there that will be difficult. Some parts will be easy. It will take a bunch of thinking. And I don't know how many releases to make it happen. I don't know if this is a 1-2 thing or not. But I'd like to get started on it because it will enable people like Vineil to write that CLI he's talking about easily. Maybe he's writing it already and maybe it's difficult. We'd like it to be easy for you to do that, Vineil.
Right.
That'll be good.
Right. And I think it should be easy. That's one, but it should also be interoperable with like other things, right? We don't want two different tools to like step on each other and kind of one tool is reaching way down into the API and then changing something. And then that vanishes when you use the higher level API. So that's also the kind of thing that we want to avoid. So ease is definitely one, but making sure that they're all built on the same underlying APIs is also important.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other part about My idea was to make things pluggable. So if you want to run it across multiple platforms, then I think the CLI should be able to handle that.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, so that's all we had for that.
There's nothing else really on the agenda. Does anyone want to bring up anything that's to talk about or questions about policy or telemetry or 1.1 or things we should discuss?
So how is the WebAssembly thing going on?
So WebAssembly work is progressing. It's taking a backseat to getting 1.1 out.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now that work is being done in like a private branch or a separate branch. We should be able to have something kind of demoable within a month. That's the goal. Wait, what day is it today?
It's the 13th.
Okay, yeah. So in mid March is when we'll have demo, and that will start coming out, and then other people can start building things on top of it.
Okay, so if you need help with pulling it across, then let me know.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks.
One thing that I did want to put out there, sort of abstractly, is we haven't really taken a good look at the dashboards since the last time they were sort of updated. And now it's been several months and there's been a lot of changes for 1.1. So if there's things that people are interested in or ways that they would want to change the dashboards or streamline them, now would be a good time to start speaking up. This tend to be pretty easy to change and don't add a lot of risk to any of the rest of the system. So I don't think about them until right before the release. But if there's anyone else, I know there's a couple issues open on GitHub, but if there's other things that are of interest, please raise them or mention them and discuss or file issues.
So I had a related comment of if there was a way to decouple the dashboards from releases, so that it's unlikely that the dashboard is going to destabilize the release, but sometimes, like most of the time, you don't want to wait that long to get a new dashboard. So if there is a way to have some other dashboard repository or something similar which can move much faster than the rest of the release.
Yes, so we had been publishing to grafana.org dashboards, and then we were going to tie that to releases, but since we haven't had a release, a 1.1 or like another big minor release, okay. we haven't done that. There's nothing coupling them except backwards compatibility if the metrics or something, the names changed across,
okay,
which they shouldn't at this point. So we can release those.
So we can release those more often.
Yes, on whatever
much more often than okay. Yeah, I think that would be super helpful, because I have heard firsthand from people that, oh, this like little thing, and then they don't really want to get a new release or for that. They just want to get the new dashboard. Okay.
So we should follow up
okay.
with an issue, but there's nothing that requires those to be released in sync. But I tend to only think about it around release time. So
okay,
we would need to establish some sort of
more frequent cadence. Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to bring up. Trying to think what else is in the air. No, that's it. So unless anyone else has something else, I suggest we adjourn.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.